All right, welcome back to season 4, episode 6. I know it's been a while since you last seen us together, audience. I can't believe this is our season 4, 4 years of doing the show. I'm incredibly proud of all the success that, we, you know, a lot of men came to us over the years. They shared their stories, and we're back for another episode today. Without further ado, RJ, go ahead and introduce yourself, where you're from, and basically what you do. And then we can get into the topic of how maybe you have help in your business or how you can help men in general to get better in their finances. And we can throw them into a health aspect in there as well, too. So go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yeah, yeah, you mentioned the concept of throwing the mental health aspect in there, but I feel like it's going to be more so like the main thing that we talk about today, just because. So, my name is Richard James Rivera. My family called me RJ growing up. And I grew up I was born in Brooklyn, New York, but then we ended up in Bel Air, Maryland by the time I was in like seventh grade. Prior to seventh grade, I moved 12 times before I was 13 years old. Single mom, always looking for better opportunity. And it was interesting because my father wasn't around when I was a kid, but my stepfather and my mom got together when I was 7. They had my little brother. Then my stepfather became incarcerated, and my biological father came back into the picture. So it was like my stepfather, my little brother's father, kind of raised me for a time there, and then my father was there to raise him when he was a kid. So it was an interesting dynamic growing up. But I got into financial services coming out of college because growing up with a single mother who was very transparent about her money stress, the thought of being able to help people like her, being able to help people like my family go from lack to abundance, that was extremely exciting for me. It lit my soul on fire. You can ask my wife how excited I was getting into financial services. I was like, oh my God, I get to, run my own business, make my own schedule, and like really help people. And I remember telling myself and the others, my mission is to be a driving force for closing the racial wealth gap. I want to get in front of as many people that look like us, black and brown folks, and give them this game about how wealthy people manage their money. But after 5 years of working in the industry, getting all the licenses, I got the Series 6 to be to broker mutual fund and exchange traded fund transactions, a Series 63. I got the Series 7 to call myself a stockbroker, Series 66 to call myself a registered investment advisor. Got all the licenses, wore the suit, learned the lingo, learned the jargon. But I finally realized after sitting down with all these people that I wanted to help and giving them all this game about how wealthy people manage their money, but then watching them do nothing with it, watching them take no action, calling them 2, 3, 4, 5 years after our initial conversation, and hearing the same story of lack, limitation, and scarcity over and over again. Oh, I still can't invest in that. I'm still, living check to check, blah, blah, blah. And I realized it wasn't just them, it was me too. I was struggling. It took me so much work to build that first business. It was such um, I think struggle is the best word. And I realized how much personal development and work on my own mindset that I needed. And that I finally realized, oh, this whole financial planning game is much less about the tangible outer stuff and what investments are you going to do, and more so the inner work. It's more so, how was I raised? What did I hear? What did I experience around money? And what's embedded in my subconscious mind that's actually blocking me from being able to experience financial success? Like, how am I self sabotaging myself around money? What stories am I telling myself about money that's actually holding me back from experiencing my grandest vision in this lifetime? So I got really passionate about doing that inner work for myself first and foremost, because I knew that's what I needed to build my business. And then I realized, okay, if I want to do what really lit my soul on fire getting into this business, which is not just be a wealth manager or help the rich get richer, but help people go from lack to abundance, then I'm not going to be able to do it just doing the traditional financial planning route and being essentially, they call you a financial advisor, but from my perspective, you're just a financial product salesman. And my goals were more aligned with insurance and investment companies, helping them achieve their goals than they were actually helping my clients achieve their goals. So that's what got me into the coaching side and learning more of the mindset. I got a certification in neurotransformational coaching through my guy Sean Smith. And ever since 2021, I've been helping people. Yes, still with the tangible stuff. I still am passionate about infinite banking and using life insurance as an asset. I'm still passionate about, helping people understand central banking and crypto and all that stuff. Like, yes, tangible outer work, but first and foremost, the inner work on your financial mindset and the way you really, it goes deep into your paradigm of the world. Do you see it as a lack and scarcity, that if I'm getting resources for me and my family, it's a finite pie and I'm actually taking away from someone else's ability to get for their and them family? Or do you recognize that we live in an abundant universe and the resources that are scarce, we actually have human ingenuity and creativity and resourcefulness that can make those resources abundant? Do you see abundance or do you see lack? So that's what I'm really passionate about, is helping people do that inner work.
And I think that's great. Thanks for sharing the story. You know, you started with why, right? You had some struggles, then you started with why. And start with the base and the root causes of that. And that helped you find the source and the path to where you're at now. And that's true for so many things, when I used to be a personal trainer, I would write these great programs for people, and then they would do it for like 2 weeks and they would fall off. And you're like, man, like it's frustrating, right? And you talk to them a month later, I'll get to it. And then I realized the same thing like you, it starts up here, right? No matter how great it is on the outside or whatever you're trying to product sell or whatever, if they're not here mentally, it doesn't get it. So, kudos to you to looking at yourself, right? Figuring that part out, and they'll be able to help people holistically as well when it comes to finances and their personal life.
Do you think there's enough wealth for everybody in the world? Do you really believe that, RJ?
100%.
Yeah.
100%. Yes, I do. I do. And I could definitely expand on that if you want me to. But
Yeah, please do. I want to know.
yeah,
It's always like, I know that you mentioned like, just because like there's gonna always be, there's gonna be like different businesses that people can build, or they can do side hustles or whatever it is to make their money. Um, and it would never take away from somebody else's, blessing or anything like that, to sort of speak. Um, but sometimes it does feel like, there isn't enough money for everybody. Hence, that's why we have the middle class, the upper class, and the really upper class, right? Like I feel like it's not, you know, equal. We're not on an equal playing field, especially in today's political economy.
That's how they want you to think.
Yeah, that's how I
The
feel.
haves, the people who have it want you to think like that. There's no other option except to use their monopoly.
Yeah,
But I'll let RJ speak on that.
yeah. So, can you
yeah,
expand on that, RJ? Or
definitely. Definitely. And I think I'll start with, are you familiar with the concept of what fiat currency is?
No, I'm not familiar with that.
Okay, so this kind of goes back to the history of money. So I'll do my best to take a big topic and condense it.
Mhm.
So when it comes to money, there wasn't money at first. It was just barter, right? It was, hey, I have a horse, I need a cow. You have a cow, right? You need
Oh,
a horse. Let's go ahead and
way
trade,
back in the
right?
day.
It
Way
was
back
just
in the day.
barter, right? It started with barter.
Yeah.
Then we realized, okay, things like commodities can be cool because everybody needs wheat. So I can use wheat as money. It has something called intrinsic value, meaning I can use it for something other than money. Everybody will use it. I need a cow. You don't have a cow, but you have some wheat. I'll trade you that wheat for I'll trade you that because I know anybody else, I can go everywhere else. Nobody is going to say no to wheat. So we can use that commodity as a form of currency. Then they realized precious metals was a really good way to do it because a little bit of it is very valuable and you don't need a lot. You can, you don't need a whole wagon load of gold to have a lot of value there. So we started using those precious metals. Again, precious metals have the intrinsic value, meaning I can use this gold for something other than just money. I can smelt it down, make it into a necklace. I can use it as tools. It has actual value. That was the gold standard. Now we have something called fiat money, which is just paper that has no value to it. The only reason it has value is because the government says it has value and they force everybody else to use it as value. That's called fiat money, fake money, money by decree. Might as well just be monopoly dollars. That is the way that they've been able to steal true value from us. And when I say they, I refer to the international bankers who created central banking, who created the Federal Reserve and the Bank of Britain and all these different central banks. When we understand what central banking is and the evil that is central banking, that you can create money out of debt, that all dollars that are in circulation are based off of debt. Someone had to get into debt for those dollars to be created. When we fully understand, and I'm not going to spend the whole time doing a whole seminar on what central banking is, but I want people to do their own research, to maybe read a book called The Creature from Jekyll Island, to fully understand what central banking is and the implications of being able to print money out of thin air with nothing of intrinsic value to back it. This is how they've been able to slowly erode our value. They can print money so that the dollars that we have lose value overnight based off of them just deciding to print money because they want to go to war or do whatever it is. So because we are in a system of fiat currency, fake paper money with no gold to back it, because they actually stole real value from us and they force us to use these fake Federal Reserve notes that are just debt notes. They're not real money. They're just notes, evidences of debt. When we fully understand what that means and the implication, that's what creates this feeling of scarcity. That's what creates this feeling of lack and that there's not enough to go around, because they've stolen the things that have true intrinsic real value. They own all the real estate, the real land. They took all the gold from us back in 1933, literally made us turn in all our gold and use their fake little Federal Reserve notes. When we understand what's actually happened to this world through central banking, that's when we realize, oh no, wow, there actually is enough to go around. We're the energy, we're the currency that's actually funding this system, our energy, our ability to go add value to other people's lives. And there's no scarcity of us and our energy and our value, but they found a very, very sneaky way to siphon that life force energy from us and take value from us slowly but surely without us really understanding what's going on. When you really understand the implication of what inflation really is, that inflation is just a very insidious and hidden tax. It's the way they tax us without directly taxing us. They siphon our value through inflation every year. You'll really realize, okay, wow, it's actually more risky for me not to be an investor than it is for me to be an investor. People think investing is risky. It's more risky not to invest than it is to invest.
And I think that's a great point. I got into investing a few years ago, and it really opened my eyes to, do you just want to work at your 9 to 5, every single day, or let money build money? And you mentioned the book, and then the one that I read was, oh my gosh, now I'm forgetting the name of it. It'll come to me in a second, but I read the book and I was like, oh my gosh, like it just opened my eyes to what currency really is, what money can really do for you, and making it work for itself. Like money idle is dead money, right? Money has to be working for you. And that's where you find, true financial stability. So what do you tell your clients, they understand what fiat is and where they're at now? Like, what's the next step?
Well, I think understanding fiat is actually not even the first step. To me, that's one of those things that, that's even more of an advanced concept. I like to start people with why. Like you mentioned that, you even said that. I think you mentioned, you started with why. And to me, the concept of saying, okay, let's sit down and, let's list out all your fixed and variable expenses. Let's understand where your assets, liabilities, income, expenses, and insurance is. Let's do this traditional financial planning. Not only can that be daunting for someone, it can also be, people will not have the motivation to do that work unless they understand why we're doing it. right? So for me, I like to take Stephen Covey's idea of beginning with the end in mind and saying, okay, before we dive into the bridge that's going to get you to the end result, we need to know where are we going? What's the whole point of this? Right? So I really find myself helping people get very, very clear about what it is that they want to experience in this lifetime. And not just the, oh, I want the house and I want the car and I want this and that. It's like, okay, what is that going to make you feel? Like, what's underlying that? Because, yeah, really, you don't really want the house and the car and all these things. What you want is how those things are going to make you feel internally, right? And the more you allow yourself to experience those feelings right now in this moment, the more creativity, resourcefulness, motivation, and inspiration you're going to receive to be able to take the actions necessary to get you there. So I'm not going to sit down with you and say, okay, let's do all this traditional financial planning work unless we're really tapped into the why behind it. Because understand, like, that work, I think because a lot of us grew up in public school, that it's not like they started us off with math saying, okay, let's understand that math is the language of the universe. Like, this is God's language, okay? They didn't get us excited about math. They just said, okay, 1 + 1 is 2, and here's what you need to know. There wasn't the underlying why behind this. So many people, I would say most people say, I'm bad at math, I hate math, F math, right?
I remember saying, why do I need trigonometry? I'm never going to use this, right? And no one explained the why.
Exactly. But if somebody started that off with, yo, this is like how God talks to us. This is God's universal language. That's what math is, right? Sacred geometry. This is going to help you understand the universe more. Then we might, have been more excited about math. And I talk about math because it's part of, financial planning, knowing your numbers, being able to dive into a compound interest calculator and saying, if I invest this amount of money at this rate of return for this amount of years, what's that going to look like? And actually understanding what that means and what you're going to do with that money long term is what will inspire you. That's a lot of times some of the work that we can do. No matter what goal we want to get to, it can be tedious. I think about like fitness, right? Not everybody loves going to the gym. Most people don't love that process in the beginning. But when they're tapped into the results that they can experience, that's what's going to motivate us to actually take those actions that we might not enjoy in the moment, but we can actually enjoy it in the moment if we're in the energy of the end. If we're already in that energy of it's already done. And I'm just
the
taking
end
the
result,
steps to get
right?
there.
Everyone loves the end result, whether it's finances, whether it's gym. You see the end result. You can see it. It's there, right? Oh my gosh, that's what I want. But the work to get there is where where it really hits home, right? You got to put in the work. You mentioned understanding a compound interest calculator, right? Learning how to do that, and it'll show you what you can do with the money. It'll also show you what you cannot do with your money, right? When you talk about loan amortization, when you start thinking about that, um, you know, people now have car loans that are $1,000, $1,200 a month, for a Honda Ridgeline or a Ford F-150, like, a depreciating value. And then when you in the credit card debt, credit cards are at 25% interest. And when you look at the amortization of that, and you see how much money that you do not have in the future because of what you're spending now, I think that again opens people's eyes. So I'm sure you talk about that as well. But it's nice to look at the compound interest. Like, okay, I'm gonna put $5 down or $100 a month into the CD or to the stock market and get 7% interest rate. Ooh, I got in 30 years I'll have $1 million, right? But then you're doing all these other things where it's already subtracting all your money because you're using high interest debt.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, it's it's kind of it reminds me of the concept of or the process to shift a limiting belief. It's like one of the ways to shift a limiting belief, one of the most important steps is getting negative leverage, meaning us humans, we tend to not change unless we fully understand and feel the fact that the pain of staying the same is greater than the pain of changing.
Oh
Right?
yeah.
So
Absolutely.
If I can see those numbers, wow. The pain of me continuing to use these credit cards or personal loans or whatever it is going to be massive down the line. That can motivate me to, okay, let me move towards the pleasure of actually gaining interest instead of having interest siphoned from me, right? I think a lot of financial advisors, personally, I don't know if he said this at all, but a lot of financial advisors like to say that Albert Einstein said that compound interest is the eighth wonder of the world, right? Those who understand it earn it. Those who don't understand it pay it.
Yeah,
Right?
absolutely. And I'm sure, like, you can probably tell a story of when your clients may had an eye-opening moment, after some time. And, they went through the initial steps that you've given them. And, let's say it's not, all right, I've changed and I'm going to follow this path, and tomorrow you're financially stable. No, it takes time, right? Dedication and discipline. But share a story about a time where somebody actually understood it, their eyes opened, that light bulb clicked, and they came back and was like, "Wow, like really appreciate your work."
Yeah. I feel like most people that I sit down with, I take them through that process of showing them what it could look like in the future when they do invest a certain amount, and that definitely opens a lot of people's eyes. But one of my favorite stories was less about the numbers and more about the inner realization. Because one of my clients, shout out Nate, my man Nate, he's one of my favorite testimonials. Because when we first started working together, he was going to do some lawn business, like a landscaping business. But the more I talked to him, the more I realized he kept talking about how excited he was and how passionate he was about working on motorcycles. And me just asking him some questions about what the future would look like in that lawn care business and getting clear about, how would that feel when you're actually where you want to be in that business, but then saying, okay, you've mentioned motorcycles a couple times. And I think it was just a simple question of why not that? Like, why, if that's your grandest vision, if that's your passion, if that's like the best thing you can imagine is being able to have your own shop to work on people's motorcycles, why not? And just that simple question helped him realize, oh, I'm making decisions from a place of fear. I'm making decisions based off of, well, I know I can make money with this, and it's not like I've ever paid, nobody's paid me to work on their motorcycle before. It was all just fear. And once he realized that and it clicked for him and he was able to see what life could, like, he just let himself imagine what that life could look like, it was like a flip switched. And my man said, no, forget the lawn care business. He went and spent, and this is a family man. He's got kids, but he made that sacrifice to spend 6 months down in Florida. He's in Maryland. He went down to Florida and spent 6 months getting his motorcycle repair mechanic license to work on different types. Then, because he set that strong intention and had active faith and actually took action towards it, then he randomly, what others would call randomly, what I would call synchronistically, found a mentor that was like, oh yeah, I built this type of business, let me show you how to do it. Then he randomly, synchronistically found another person that had a shop that he could use that was like, oh yeah, you're dope, just use my space, use my shop. So within the span of 6 months, he's got his license, he's got a mentor to help him build his business, and he's got a space to work. And now he's doing what he loves to do, working on motorcycles, and he added cars into there as well. So it's like just asking those powerful questions that people haven't asked themselves. It helped him realize that this is my one life that I know of, at least in this particular skin suit. Let me go after my grandest vision. Let me do what I really love to do. You know what I mean?
And I just got two final questions here. I wanted to, now that's all nice and dandy, but no one never talks about the negative side of, building a business and not seeing any results. So have you ever had a client that came to you back and said you follow all these steps and it didn't work out for them at all, or it always worked out for them?
I wouldn't say it always worked out. I've definitely had folks. I'm thinking of one specific person who still has yet to get to a place of recognizing that it was like he was too focused on the end result instead of being focused on the system that would inevitably lead.
Mm-hmm.
My thing is focus on the end result. so that you can let yourself feel how good that would feel, right? Because those feelings, if you're embodying the energy of that person that you would be when you're experiencing that, now you're going to have the creativity, resourcefulness to actually put in the work to experience it. But if we're not also coming back and saying, okay, yes, I'm going to embody that energy while focused on the system that's going to inevitably lead to that result. So, for example, this person, he loves photography and he wanted to be a photographer. But instead of spending that time taking pictures every day and reaching out to people saying, hey, help me build my portfolio, I'll just do it for free, like what I did with my coaching. Hey, let me just coach you for free, build up my testimonials, build up my experience. Instead of doing that, he was looking for other jobs, right? And it's like, you can do that. Look for the job, get the steady income, and spend some time every day on that system. Spend some time in that work of reaching out to people or just going out and taking some photos to build your portfolio, right? But because he was stuck in that lack mindset, he's like, oh, I got to get this job. I just got to focus on the job. And then he gets the job and he doesn't like it. So now he's looking for a different job. And it's all in that energy of lack instead of in the energy
we all
of
been there
what could
before.
be.
We all been there before.
100%, bro. 100%. That's why when you first asked that question, I was like, do I even talk about clients or just me? Because that's me. Like I've, spun my wheels, making the same mistakes over and over again.
Yeah, and the reason why I asked that question is because, we have a lot of people online, doing a lot of, nefarious things to get money, or, they make it build up the hype for you. Like, you can get this much money in so many hours or so many days. And so I just wanted to, remind my audience that it just takes time to build a business, and that, even if, you've been doing a show or you've been, doing things for years, it might, the ROI might not be for years later. Like your return on investment may not be for years later. And so it's important for people to take their time to understand that and not rush. And it's hard to do that sometimes. And, people get depressed, they get suicidal, they might feel like, why am I even trying to build this business, or why am I even trying to, create this side hustle that's not going anywhere. So we just always want to be realistic, because that can ultimately lead to poor mental health. But where can people find you? Where can people find you at?
Yeah, best place is probably Instagram. That's where I'm most active. I'm at RJ Rivera Coaching on Instagram. And then if you wanted to get access to just learning some more about me, and I have an online course called the Money Mindset Mastery Program. Some people just want to do the online course to get the information. Other people want actually like one-on-one coaching to get help with embodiment of that information. But yeah, they can check me out at internallyrichcoaching.com.
Okay. All right. Did you have any
conversation? Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me, fellas. I really appreciate it. It was great to meet you both.
All right. Take care. Wayne, you could stay on for a little while. We could chat for a minute.